All right. We're good to go, Coney. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen really quickly. My name is Stephen Barrett, and we're getting ready to have some fun with Esoteric Lighthouse this evening. So we're gonna get ready for some good time. So can everybody see my screen? We're good. All right. So I want to introduce everybody to Esoteric Lighthouse. We're going to go over a couple things. You need to sit back and relax. I'm going to be like your head flight attendant on this flight, okay? And then we're going to get you started. When we get to cruising altitude, then we're going to have this guy, Mike Williams, come in here and just take us on home, man. It's going to be a phenomenal evening. So tonight's podcast is going to be on the Triangle and the Yod, or the Yud, depending on where you go. So again, my name is Stephen Barrett. And just kind of going through a couple things with you first, just to let you know who we are. So Esoteric Lighthouse, we are a group of free and accepted Masons focused on the esoteric, occult, and philosophical lessons found in Freemasonry. This being a public forum, it is not a legal interpretation or statement of any Grand Lodge, district, or local Masonic body. Any views or opinions expressed by the panelists or guests are solely their own. They do not represent any Grand Lodge, district, or local Masonic body or views of its officials to which the panelists hold membership for. So getting that disclaimer out the way, we're getting ready to get this bad boy rolling. So I'm here just to kind of give you guys a little update and understanding of the foundation of what we're getting ready to speak about here today. So first, we're going to talk about the triangle. Now, this is going to be a small but powerful tool and symbol that's going to be used throughout all different things, not just masonry, but just in life in general. So like I said, let's sit back and let's get it going. So understanding for the foundation of how this triangle is going to work. When you look at a triangle, you start off first with a point, then you go to a line, then you go to a superficies. So that should be pretty familiar with some individuals. And this is basically the start of the physical reality of what we're getting to create. So that's kind of what this triangle is starting to represent. It's the smallest form and the building blocks of life. And there's one thing that throughout research, what I learned, and this is esoterically, as well as like our physical nature, like what we do to build or create a world. Equilateral triangle is the strongest structure that's found in nature. And again, it's the birth of surface and structure. Now, taking a little transition is when you look at the triangle, or more specifically the equilateral triangle, we kind of dive into sacred geometry. And then we see this tetrahedron. And what this is like I said, this gives shape to it. And this three-dimensional shape that you have is, again, it's going to be able to represent certain items like fire from a spiritual sense. Then think about this. It's going to connect along the same lines of when you go to chemistry, we use the sign of the equilateral triangle, the delta, to represent heat. It's going to have to help out with change in chemical processes. We find it in molecular chemistry, and that's how bonds are formed too as well. And the thing that like motivated and moved me the most when I learned about the equilateral triangle is we learned about the vesica Pisces. So when you have two circles that overlap each other, these 3 points that touch, you end up getting the vesica Pisces, which in it has the mathematical equation for light. So what you do is at the end of this podcast, go back and look at the, like creation, like Genesis, and kind of walk through that process and says, let there be light. There's something that goes on in that part that really resonates, that comes out of when you learn and you see about the triangle. Now, going a little bit deeper into like a little bit about divinity and Trinity, because think about triangle 3. There's a lot of things that are being associated when you come to like 3, and you can be represented by this triangle. So you can have light, energy, mass, mind, body, soul, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the 3 pure ones in Taoism, Odin, Vila, and Ve. You find throughout all types of cultures, you see this representation of the manifestation of divinity through 3, and that's how it's going to be able to come through. Because what you'll see, what we talk about is this throughness that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. You have 2 things that birth the 3rd thing, and it's the birth of that 3rd action that gives us the stability that we need. So having a father, having a mother, and then you have a child, something of that nature, right? Also, you understand this 3rd point gives you balance. So remember how we talked about on the first slide that this is one of the strongest, most stable structures that you have. So it's not until you have that 3rd point that you have like a foundation to stand something on. symbolically as well as physically in some cases, right? Now, one thing jumping into the next here is, of course, with us being esoteric lighthouse and speaking about the Yod, we have to go to the Kabbalistic tree of life, right? One thing that you see as this tree of life is forming, you'll see at that top level, there's a supernal triangle. It's the top 3 Sephiroths that in there. Check out some of our other podcasts where we talked about the tree of life and the Sephiroths to kind of come back in there and tie it into this. But just want you to get the idea that these top 3, the Kether, Chokmah, and Binah, these 3 at the top, these are the spiritual realm. This is something in which you're going to see down the road is something extremely powerful. And it's the first creation, the first start of manifestation, right? Now, one thing I'm gonna read in here that this kind of like moved me, because when you think about throughness, this is something that's interesting. So the initial burst of energy into our universe from Kether to Chokmah via the 11th path, which is the magician, shows the first act of creation and also it's illusion and manifestation. Because again, duality is an illusion, and which is something we can talk about a little bit later on. Now, this illusion that we were speaking about is from the separation of energy into sexual components. Thus, where you thought you're getting, like I said, the differences in sexes where you have like female energy and male energy, right? But again, this is the separation, again, is an illusion from it. For the true adepts, they would know. And then through the 14th path of the emperor, links male energy to Binah, the female energy, so that she can create her children or basically our reality. So that's going to get into a part. So again, think about this when you go back and rewatch this and you're going through it. Think about, like I said, the tree of life in creation. You see this triangle. It didn't come in 4, it didn't come in 2, it came in 3 for specific reasons, right? Now, this is a little bit of a foundation of the triangle, a little bit where you're going to see this touch basis so that when past Master Williams comes in here, he's gonna expound upon this. So now going over to the Yod or the Yod. This one, as I was doing my research, moved me because you're gonna see something. There's a little symbol down there, the hand of God. Is something that's very ties in very deeply to the triangle. Now, something that you have to be able to understand, as we talked about before, is with Hebrew letters, they have multiple meanings. So you have to ask yourself, what are these multiple meanings? They're numerical values, stories, even the shape and the way that it's drawn has a representation to teach us how things are going. So these are some things that you need to be able to understand, that the numerical value of this is 10. The first time we get digits that don't repeat themselves, we get a 1 and a 0. The sound is Y. The meaning of this letter is the hand of God or continuity. It also looks like a flame. We'll talk about that area because think about the triangle. We're talking about some flames and stuff. It might connect in there. And what it basically is too is it symbolically represents the blessings descending from God to his people. Because again, we're talking about that hand of God and how it comes down and it touches us in our reality. Now, here are some of the attributes of the Yod, right? One thing that I think is interesting to note, it is the smallest letter. It also can be looked at as a spark, like a start of something. Again, we're talking about flames on the triangle, all that stuff. You see kind of how they're connecting. Design also shows it is a point which is God's indivisible nature. Because again, when we started building our world, we talked about a point. A point is a dimensionless shape or figure. It's like the start of it. This Yod kind of has a little bit of that representation in there, starting like, hey, we're starting from that initial point and then we're going to go into creation, right? Or the seminal drop. That's what we talked about here. And then again, you want to take a look at the Simzum. This is the contradiction of the basically the Most High bringing his entity and his being. Basically have to put it like maybe like in a smaller ball or so, in a sense you can kind of think of, to be able to allow us, because we can't basically look at or be around his full potential. We can't bask in his full glory. So he has to basically like dumb down some of his power so that we can be able to experience it, right? So this is what's happening too, as well as you can think about. That's another representation of this, which is the Simzu, and what you can think about is it's at the top part of the Kabbalistic tree of life. And I want you to again remember too, because remember we talked about the number 10 with the Yod. it's the beginning of the two-digit numbers. There's 10 that's in almost every facet that we can look at in life. So it's the 10 starts of the building blocks. You have the 10 Sephiroth, 10 commandments, 10 Jewish people form the Minyan. And then according to Mishnah, the world was created by 10 divine utterance, right? So we see this representation continuously taught to us and about this creation and basically the level of detail in which this kind of goes into. And for all my Scottish Rite and York Rite Masons, it starts off the Tetragrammaton, which is phenomenal. And if you know something about that, that's a whole nother lecture for a whole nother day that we might have to pick up, right? And so as I conclude, again, this is just a foundation. This is just so that when Mike's talking, you understand kind of where he's going with some of his things. But these are some things I want you to consider is like, how is the Yod and the Triangle connected? You'll see Grand Inspector General Coney Bond sporting a fantastic hat that I'm going on record saying that it should show up in my house one day. But in that house, you see this. Think about the storylines of where you see these things and what the message is trying to be conveyed. I believe too, how does it tie into creation? Think about how so many people ask the question of how we got here, or why we here, or some of these things. As you study some of these symbols, you're going to be able to dive down this rabbit hole in this deep abyss, which is comforting. It's uncomfortable, but it's still comforting because you're going to find some things when you dive down deep in there, and you're going to see some universal truths that's going to span across centuries, decades, years, minutes, and times. Right. And then also what you'll do is you'll start to see kind of how these things are represented daily. So you're going through and even if you're looking at like at an arch and you see the 3 points that are connected, you're like, wow, so they're doing an arch because of basically architecture, science, geometry. This is a strong hold to be able to hold and support this weight. It disperses the weight evenly around so that we can have archways and different things of that nature. And then from there, you can be somewhere at your mosque, synagogue, you can be at your church, and you can experience something that they talk about that relates to the triangle, and it's going to resonate with you on the level that you need to be able to vibrate with. So these are just some things for you to consider. Come back, watch this over, play it again. Because you're going to see that it's going to tie into almost every facet of life that you do. Here are some of the references that I use to be able to put together this presentation. We're trying to be able to present this to individuals because if you want to do your own reading, come up with your own conclusion. Our goal is not for you to be able to take our word as gospel. It's to incite this riyats, like this spark, right? When we're talking about with the Yod, this spark of flame of curiosity, of knowledge, to be able to go through and just fight and try to get everything you possibly can so that you can improve your life and improve the lives of those around you. So again, I appreciate you all. My name is Stephen Baird. And what I'm gonna do right now is I'm excited. I'm getting ready to turn into a fan and a student. I'm gonna turn this over to the man, the myth, the legend himself, Michael Williams.
All right, can y'all see my screen? And man, myth, the legend. I'm just a person, sir.
Nah,
you're blow me up like that.
Nah, man. I'm excited, man. I'm excited. I got to give it. You're in presenter mode too. We're seeing the presenter mode with the sides.
Okay, so you can see presenter mode.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tonight's subject, Hand of God. Again, I'm Michael Williams, and this is Esoteric Lighthouse. Thanks for the introduction from my compadre, the illustrious Stephen Barrett. As he mentioned, the Hand of God has something to do with that little dot or that point within a circle that we see in multiple facets throughout Masonry and esotericism. When you see that little dot or that yod, that little dot has a lot of significance. It has a lot of meaning behind it. And it is very rarely explored. On this first scene here, you see the hand. Many people who've ever been to or seen pictures of the Sistine Chapel, and the birth of Adam and God's touching his hand, God touching Adam's hand, that hand point, that little point or a little spark in the center usually is depicted, it represents that same Yod. And moving on. So here's my agenda. I'll be going over the mind, consciousness, the pineal gland, and the infinite. All right. So what is the mind? Well, technically, our mind is a lot of different things. We really don't know what the mind is. We have assumptions of what the mind is. Philosophers have theories, and scientists have evidential data from studying and research of what supposedly the mind functions, and that's what we have. But some of the things that I've found through my research over the years is that basically our minds are full of three senses. We have the sensual mind, the intermediate mind, and the inner mind. This is basically our thinking and our reason. The sensual mind elaborates its concepts of contents and data provided by the five senses. And the concepts of the content form their reasoning. So basically, you develop your reasoning and your reasoning for actions and how to do things based off of your five senses. So whatever inputs and data that you receive, that's what your information is, and that's how you're developing your reason. The sense of mind demands facts. It is external and sensorial world, such as the sky is blue, I can feel the cold winter breeze on my face, etc. The intermediate mind is based on the beliefs, all kinds of beliefs, and cannot go beyond them. The intermediate mind is much deeper than the sensual mind. This is where inquiring thoughts come from. How are we receiving information? This is where we develop our beliefs, i.e. religion, tradition, customs, and courtesies. The inner mind is objective reasoning. Who has climbed the steps of inspiration has intuition. Undoubtedly, it has opened up an amazing door of the inner mind. The intuits are expressed through the inner mind. That is, a person perceives and expresses the superlative consciousness of his own deeper inner being. This is true knowledge. The mind structure. The mind structure is basically, it goes off of three transcendental arguments or three conditions of the mind, which we have to experience things, which is knowledge, perception, and our mental state. Knowledge is the information, again, that we receive. Then our perception is how we deal with that information. And our mental state, yes, our mental state has a lot to do with how we receive information and knowledge at that time. Because if I'm in a happy mood and in a pleasant mood and I receive something that's good information for me, I might take it wholeheartedly and embrace it. But if my mental state isn't correct, I might not embrace that information, and it could be something that is detrimental and I bypass it because my mental state was not correct at that time of reception. So these three transcendental arguments, knowledge, perception, and mental state, focuses on our mind structure. The mind has two separate regions, consciousness mind and memory. Memory is the equivalently of the unconscious, Memory is the equivalency of unconscious mind. A mind requires a body and a brain. And B, conscious mind deals with now. Memory deals with only then. The only instance of time we can ever experience is now. Mind is limited to, whereas consciousness is infinite. Mind needs sensory information, input from hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, etc. Compartments for tasks can be isolated, and these tasks can be even isolated from conscious knowledge. So basically, your sensory mind needs something, a compartment to put it in to understand this information. Consciousness is an infinite energy. Let me say it again. Consciousness is an infinite energy. It cannot be changed, destroyed. It's always there. It's always present. Consciousness is always present. So it's everywhere. It's just a level of consciousness that a thing has. Let me say that again. It's just a level of consciousness that a thing has. Consciousness is everywhere. Everything lives, breathes, and has some sort of consciousness, conscious energy. And these fields create conditions to manifest different realities according to the different sensories of perception. Consciousness is persistent, pre-existing, universal presence that is fundamental. And this is the fundamental element of both mind and matter. So conscious energy is both mind and matter. Conscious energy is universal and it's the universal presence. It is a pre-existing condition. Consciousness is always there. Again, consciousness is always present. It's the level of consciousness that is aware of itself. Let me say it again, level of consciousness that's aware of itself. Consciousness is the sight and the seer simultaneously, the observer and the observed. So can you see yourself and understand that you are observing yourself at the same time? That's consciousness. Parts of the mind and their primary functions. Parts of the mind and their primary functions are rational, analytical, willpower, temporary memory, which is limited. Our rationale, that's how we rationale, how do we absorb this information and, say, hey, this is what we're going to do with it, blah, blah. And that feeds from the analytical part of it. We analyze this information and we embody it. Then we use our willpower to determine and decipher our next course of action. And temporary memory, what I mean by temporary memory, which is the limited memory that we have to do that task at that moment. So these are primary functions. So again, temporary memory. So let me go back on the temporary memory. So say, for instance, temporary memory, I'm thirsty. I need to drink a glass of water. So that's temporary memory. I'm gonna use that. So then that memory's thrown away. You don't really pay attention to that temporary memory. You use that and that information is discarded and is used, that space or that data plate is saved for later for some more extensive information that you want to save. So what is consciousness? Consciousness by definition. Consciousness by definition is the state of consciousness, conscious knowledge of one's own existence, condition, sensations, mental operations, and acts. Immediate knowledge or perception of the presence of any object, state, or sensation. An alert cognitive state in which you are aware of yourself and your situation. Consciousness by definition. Conscious thought, the brain's natural way of understanding. How do we know what we're currently thinking? Intuition has it, such as knowledge is often immediate, as consciousness, or simply introspection. So basically, our brain's natural way of thinking is our own intuition. That intermediate knowledge that's right there. So basically introspection on the situation, conscious thought. Powers of consciousness, being aware, it's broad and spatial. Attention, which is focus and perception. Mindfulness, recognizing continuity. Visualization, non-physical imagery. What most people or what most perceive as consciousness in their mind's way of, which is actually their mind's way of interpreting observable behavior. The intellect and the mind and the background are the same, but the mind uncultivated is not intellect. The cultivated mind is intellect. Some might be very intelligent, but some may not possess the intellect. Consciousness is in action. Consciousness in action is mind and neural activity occurring in matter. So basically what I'm saying is consciousness, as simple put, is your neural activity. That's your brain workings. This is just us thinking. This is what's going on. So when people saying I'm woke, I'm conscious, yeah, we all woke, we all conscious. So there's nothing different. Conscious energy is always present. What's different is your understanding and how you use your conscious energy. Let me say that again. What is different is how you use your conscious energy. All right, moving on to the pineal gland. So what is the pineal gland? Well, the pineal gland is this little receptor that supposedly is the seat of the soul. And this, the pineal gland, they say, is the third eye. And this also is also the point within the circle, or the yod, and also the key to the tetragrammaton. Pineal, for pine cone, is the endocrine gland in the center of the brain. E.A. Wallace Budge has noted in some of the Egyptian papyri illustrating the entrance of the soul of the dead into the judgment hall of Osiris, the deceased person has a pine cone attached to the crown of his head. Several spiritual philosophies contain the notion that the inner third eye related to the pineal gland, which is attributed to the significance of the mystical awakening or enlightenment, higher states of consciousness, or extrasensory perception, ESP. Mention this is found historically in the ancient Central and East Asia, and also in contemporary metaphysical theories relating to yoga. The pineal gland being the only singular structure in the brain and having a strategic position between two halves is believed to be connected between the intellect and the body. The third eye could be activated by the spiritual world frequencies, enabling a person to have the sense of all-knowing, godlike euphoria and oneness all around him or herself. So again, this third eye could be activated to spiritual world frequencies, enabling a person to have a sense of all-knowing, godlike euphoria and oneness of all around him or herself. Now, again, I just recently said that the consciousness is always on. Conscious energy is everywhere. It's always present. So this is saying that your third eye or your pineal gland, once activated, it can tap into it. In reality, you can tap into it 24/7. The reality of tapping into these things is being aware of who you are and understanding your reality of things. Information is available to you. Creativity is available to you. You have the creative nature. You may not do it today, but if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. So we got to stop thinking about fairy tales and start thinking about reality. Again, on with the pineal gland, clairvoyance or clear vision. Yes, clairvoyance. That's all it means, clear vision. Looking beyond the problem and overcoming the impossible. Looking beyond the problem and overcoming the impossible. That's true clairvoyance and clear vision. That's having a goal. That's having determination. That's having focus. That's having drive. Looking beyond the problem and overcoming the impossible. True clairvoyance. In ancient Egypt, the pineal gland was known as the seat or the spirit or the soul. This is used as a third eye, again, as a route to the higher awareness and consciousness. The Buddhists related to a spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening. Okay, again, clear vision, seeing beyond the problem, going beyond, overcoming the impossible, spiritual awakening. It ain't nothing fancy. putting your mind to it and getting to it. The Hindus connected the third eye, which represents intuition and clairvoyance. Again, intuition. All intuition is, hey, I see something. I got an objective. I'm going to see it through. Jesus supposedly said that the eye is the lamp of the body. And if the eye is clear, the body will be filled with light. This relates to the eye of intuition, the pineal gland. Seeing things clearly and in truth. Seeing things clearly and in truth. In the book of Revelation, those with the sign of the beast on their forehead symbolize the closed down pineal gland, meaning spiritual death. Meaning that they didn't understand. People who give up. People who don't have the drive. People who don't have the ambition. People who have a goal but don't follow through. The philosopher Rene Descartes believed that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul and it connects the physical body to the mind. All right. So here, we're going to talk about the horns of Moses. So the horns of Moses is actually the hippocampus. The hippocampus is where the pineal gland sits between the two hemispheres of the brain. The horns of Moses represents self-realization and your willpower. Again, Moses represents self-realization and your willpower. On the right, you see a graph. This is the inner world of the brain and the outer world of the brain. I'll start from the bottom with the liaison to the brain. The liaison to the brain is the outer world. This is everything that we see. Going over to the left, we'll see that it has an interface. The interface is basically our eyes and our brain. So the outer senses is light, color, sound, smell, taste, pain, touch, etc. Those outer senses affect our inner senses, which are our thoughts, our feelings, our memories, our dreams, our imagination, our intentions, which are also influenced by the inner world or outer world. So our outer world or our inner world is influenced twice by our outer senses and our inner senses. All of these things affect that inner world, which is called the seat of the soul or the pineal gland, and which is the hippocampus, where the hippocampus sits, which is the ego, the self, the soul, and the will. What is the ego? People say, oh, the ego is a bad thing. The ego is our mechanism to be who we are. That is simply it. The ego is who we are. There's nothing right, wrong, or indifferent of an ego. Oh, we got to kill the ego. No, you don't have to kill your ego. What you have to do is control yourself, the self. The self is our personality. Our personality is, the ego is, if I could say it the best way, the ego is, that's our voice. That's who we are day to day. The self is that voice in our head, and the soul is what drives us. Our will is what sees it through. These four things are what we use as our conscious energy. This is Yod. This is the pineal gland. Ego, self, soul, will. This is what you use to go out and do your day-to-day life. All that other fancy stuff they talk about, that's not real. This is what is real. When you put the rubber to the road and you see what it's about. And you don't have to take my word for it. You believe how you study your esotericism. I believe how I study mine. But when you get down to it, and I'll have my references and you can look at them and you decide for yourself. Moving on to the infinite. God, Almighty, one, creator, the ruler of all, the universe, the infinite, the eternal. God is not a person, but a principle. Underlying, unchangeable truth. Let me say it again. God, the Almighty One, the creator, the ruler, the universe, the infinite, the eternal. God is not a person, but a principle, underlying unchangeable truth. The realm of the infinite consciousness is the realm of transpersonal experience, as well as the realm of the afterlife, the infinite life, the infinite life. When you dream, what do you see? When your eyes are closed, what do you see? Is it the absence of light, or is it infinite energy that looks like a starry night lit sky when you stare into space? I don't know. That's what I see. But the evidence of infinite consciousness is available the moment you become willing to deeply investigate the moment. Let me say that again. The evidence of infinite consciousness is available the moment you become willingly, deeply to investigate the moment. That means to live in the now. You have to live in the now and realize that you are here, ever present. Stop thinking about the past. That's your memory. Don't worry about the future because it'll come. You already did. Don't worry about it. So focus on now and focus on what you can do now. Yes, plan for the future. Yes, you have to have a plan. You have to have goals. But those goals and those plans have to be in the now, not in the daydream. Infinite means without any limits. Being endless, vast, immeasurable, and universally omnipresent. Again, let me say that, omnipresent. Infinite is right here, omnipresent right now. The mind is consciousness, which has the mind is consciousness, which we have put limitations on it. You are originally unlimited and perfect. Later, you took on limitations and became the mind. Ramana Maharshi. And this concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, let us know. And you can scan the QR code on the left for my references. I'll leave it up there for a second.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, AK man, get it popping, man. I took some notes, man, but kind of get to go down this road while we get some questions in the chat. But yeah, man, go for it, Mike. Phenomenal lecture, sir.
Yeah, it is. And great intro to the series. Brother Barrett, I appreciate it, man. You did an awesome job as well. But before we get into that, I want to take a step back, because when we talk about mechanics and we talk about the letter of the alphabet on the Yod itself, it means so much. It's not simple. It's not simplistic in which we think it is. So the question that I have when I look at this particular letter and we look at the gematria of it, what could we teach someone from just this letter being itself in its totality?
Who you want me to go first?
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Well, I'll go first. Well, just as Stephen mentioned earlier, Yod in its totality is the number 10. It's completion. So when you look at the arcanum of the zodiac, it's the wheel, it's the circle. Everything comes around, goes around again. So it's a 1 and 0. It's also speaking binary. So this thing is talking computer language. The Yod is more than what you think. And as we mentioned in the lecture, it represents the pineal gland. It's the point within the circle. So it's that balance and equilibrium of everything. Like I said, it sits on the hippocampus or the horns of Moses. So the horns of Moses is a whole nother lecture in itself. And the hippocampus is something else in itself. So, and then when you start talking about that, you start going into Royal Arch degree and the 13th degree and the Scottish Rite and things like that. So when you start talking about the horns of Moses and then other houses in the Kadosh, the 24th, was that the chief of the tabernacle, either 23rd or 24th degree, whichever one of those is the chief of the tabernacle degree. So you start looking at that, man. Chief of the tabernacle, also some of the prince of the tabernacle as well. So what you're talking about the hippocampus actually when you're talking about those degrees.
See, I let him go first to try to warm it up a little bit, but then make it hot. Yeah, okay. But no, one thing.
Like I said, that number 10 is the principle. Again, it's the in the zodiac, not the zodiac wheel, but the tarot wheel. It represents the number 10, and it's the wheel of life. It's completion. Things come around. What goes around comes around. So it also tells us that you have to, if you make the same mistake and you keep making the same mistake, you're gonna keep going around in the same circle. Cause of basically karma. So 1 in 10. I mean, simply put, that's what it is.
Okay.
So I'm glad that you brought up something too, because I look at it as the first step, and it's like one is the smallest letter. 2, it just reminds us of, again, like I said, the illusion of separation. See, what happened is people think, like I know I used to think a lot of time there was hot and cold is different, right? Hot and cold is not, it's all a temperature, just a different degree of temperature, right? So the Yod comes back and it reminds us that, hey, like we're all in this. Remember, Mike was talking about consciousness and everything has consciousness. So like if you ever research like collective consciousness and other things, like we're all in this together. We're basically all like fingers of the same hand, right? And I think this is the start of it, to be able to remind you that, like, nah, bro, we all in this. We all together. And I think that I'm trying to think of how to say this. I think that's just a nod to the royal secret. If you think about it, right? Because if you know really what's up and what's popping, you're like, oh, okay, I could.
But get this,
it's represented in that little one, that small little, boop, that little flame has a royal secret right then and there.
But here's the thing: people think collective consciousness. We gotta go to collective consciousness. Collective consciousness is already here. Remember, in our chat in Group Me earlier this week, I proved it. It's simple as music. When we can pull a song that all of us heard in the 80s, 90s, or whatever, and we can remember where we were at when we heard that song the very first time. That's collective consciousness. Music, sound, industry, TV, media, although we don't like media the way it is set up, media is the full compendium of collective consciousness. If we're all watching the same thing at the same time, our thoughts and emotions are all pouring into the same thing. That is true collective consciousness. Not, us thinking, we got to come together and, have a utopia moment. We got to get out of this fantasy. I'm not sure where this fantasy stuff came from. It was a great idea, but at the end of the day, when, I'm 44 years old, I'm looking at this stuff. After 22 plus years, I didn't get all the fantasy out of me. And at the end of the day, this is what I see. This is what the ancients are telling us. Hey, we got to come together collectively. We all we got.
Hey, Coney, I saw a question in here, if you don't mind, sir, if that's all right with you. I think I might know this guy, Michael Bailey. He asked the question, said, isn't all Hebrew letters start from the Yod?
Not all Hebrew letters start with the letter Yod.
Okay.
Yeah, but some words do. I won't say which one, so.
No, man, that's it. Hey, I did have a question here, if you don't mind me stealing it. So, like, so you already answered my question about the connection, consciousness and everywhere. So now this is I don't know.
We got another one in here. So it said the smallest letter, Yod is the smallest Hebrew letter, and the other Hebrew letters are made from it. Yes, what they're meaning by I think by the design of it, like the Yod is the principal letter, and then like every other shape is based off of the shape of the Yod. But yeah, so I agree with that. Yeah, so in that case, that would be true. Then everything starts from Yod.
Yeah. that's the beauty. That's the beauty of studying this portion of knowledge, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you don't get that in like the English language. Like I'm not like an A is an A, bro. Like I'm done. You know what I mean? Like I'm not
Right.
worried about if it's a house or anything else. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
so.
and that's why I'm so adamant on expressing that. Like when and other people are adamant as me. You can't say, "Hey, I'm gonna take this translation of these texts and keep translating it and come up with a whole different meaning." No, you can't. The Hebrew alphabet is set. You can't try Hebrew gematria with Arabic gematria. It doesn't work.
Right.
So just to go back a couple of episodes, I made a comment. I said that it doesn't work. And what I meant by it doesn't work, Hebrew esotericism and Islamic esotericism, if it is one, and they say it's Sufism, but it's two different things. So the letters and the words won't match up. So people, they take these letters and these words and they try to translate it. It doesn't work. You're trying to cast a spell, but you're casting a spell to the air. What are you doing? So yeah, well, it says this, and this means the same, or it looks similar. No, Hebrew letters are the same. As we get back to it, as we said, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and all of them have a different meaning. They go from 1 to 400 or 600 or something like that in counts. So, double letters and mother letters and all of that. So when these people say, "Hey, I'm in this organization and I'm translating it by this term," okay, don't mean nothing to me. I got it, great. I took it to the master source. That's me. I believe in source documents. You got to go all the way to the root. And if you truly want to understand what we're talking about, you got to go to the root. And somebody has a library. Many people have libraries. We help people get to what they want to find. So if you really want to get into understanding yourself and this type of knowledge, please reach out. As long as we breathing, somebody's going to help you.
True.
I will say, through study, and it's one of those things that as we apply what we think we know and what we're trying to learn when we study a different language like Hebrew, to understand that these letters are not simplistic in nature, but they're powerful in application, because you can meditate on a letter itself and understanding how it's used and its number behind that letter. And then you go down another vein of how that number can be applied to your reality. Because if we look at the Bible as a reference, but not a canonical place of truth because of its allegory and its parables, we look at those numbers are applied to a concept. And everything is numbered in such a way that math represents energy. So that energy is, like you said, when you talk about the mind and the consciousness, if that totality of unity of consciousness is energy and it's being moved, and you recognize patterns, and those patterns become numbers, and those numbers can be said to resound or a sound or become a letter, you can go forwards and backwards in your understanding of what the alphabet is trying to teach you. And that is why we always say, through our past lectures, the all in the all, or the single consciousness. The single consciousness is a single awareness of what God is trying to teach us as we experience this spiritual concept in a fleshly body on a material plane. So we always go back to that beginning of what is that beginning of that Malkuth, or the bottom step of the tree that we're always in. And as Brother Barrett said, he was stating that when you talk about concepts within concepts and trees within trees and things like that, you understand that it is dimensions within dimensions. It goes beyond what we think and we know. So it's amazing how when we see the Yod within a triangle, the hand of God within a three-pointed object, the triangle is all over Masonry. The triangle is everywhere. It's been stated as one of the most powerful shapes in the universe because it represents just the Trinity and the unification of thought and mind and body. So to me, to put these two objects together for someone that doesn't know the language is simply telling them that God is literally in the middle of everything. And within that strongest shape, we are unified in that single level of consciousness, as he was saying, is that it's not a person, but it's a concept. So when you understand those two things, you begin to understand how you need to study and meditate. So it's taking that theory and becoming application, in a sense.
I
This is
love it.
good.
I love it.
Mm.
Oh,
Do we
see,
have, go ahead.
I was just say CWH said something that was interesting. I like. He says interesting how gematria means geometry in Greek. I didn't know
Right.
that. I was like, hey, that's I bangs with that. I like that.
Right. And that's the thing. My son, he takes analytical geometry with Trick, and it's an AP course. And he was showing me how you can take a simple plane of 2 points and take it through different dimensions, and you can begin to calculate time and space from that. And then you can analyze what would be the actual end result of adding different spatial numbers to that different shape. So it's like it's almost like it's theoretical, but then it's conceptual and practical at the same time. That's called analytical geometry, right? Because if you think about it, space is empty. Nothing exists. It's just not there. But remember, we were talking about the circle and the dot. The center then that does not exist except there are boundaries. So the center becomes when the boundary is set. Once you draw a circle, the center is there, but you don't see it until you put the dot. The dot identifies the center. So then at that point, there is space that is identified as well. So then what happens as well, you create what's called a diameter. And then you create what's called a circumference, which is ever ending, which is pi. So when you start to see this, once the boundary is not such a bad thing, boundary is a marker by which we can delineate what is there that we do not see right now to the blind eye. Because only God in his all in the consciousness of that movement does it know where everything really is. But to our naked eye, we can't see. So that's why we mark things or we create circles with dots. So we understand what the center and the boundary is, with the beginning and the circle being infinity or infinite. We don't know a start or ending. We just know that there's a center and there's space and there's an all. So it's like it's representative in such a simple shape, but yet it speaks so much volumes when you meditate upon it. And I think that's what we're trying to teach everybody, is that when you learn masonry, is to understand that each shape is for, or each object or each image that we look at is for you to meditate on what it's trying to teach you, and how you can apply that, and how you can teach yourself and your family and your others, and also your lodge. So this is what we're trying to get everybody to understand. This was not just a lesson by happenstance, but it's trying to get you how to apply it and take it to another step in your own life and in your own practice. Because I think Mike, he took a lot of jujitsu and some other hand-to-hand combat stuff like that. But those are actions based on philosophical principles. You cannot take your opponent out unless you know your opponent and know what you're trying to do, so that you can exert the least amount of energy but be the most amount effective, right? So that's what I think. There's those philosophical teachings. It's not so much to kill or maim, but it's to protect, and is also to teach. So when you look at what we're teaching here, that's basically what we're all learning in all these practices that we have. And it's just profound. So I think that triangle with the yod, or the circle and the dot, or the serpent and the cross, or whatever it may be, is to meditate and teach you a philosophical lesson.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, bro. See, I forgot I was on the panel, bro. I was over here like, oh, this is nice. This is nice.
I'm up here taking notes too.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, bro. I'm like, hey, man, I'm just a visitor here. There's a question here, and then we probably can wrap this up after this one. But it says from Cook, says, we also find the triangle through the lodge. Does each triangle have its own yod, or should we understand it as the yod is singular within all the triangles? Come on, Mike. I'm gonna let you bring this one home, bro.
If thine eye be single, straight is the gate, narrow is the way.
Right.
And as I mentioned earlier, Consciousness is in all. Is either memory or is active. All is one.
There it is. I love it. Well, I'm gonna let us go ahead and we're coming up on the hour mark. Have us wrap up here. Mr. AK Coney Bonds, I'll let you have the last word, but I want to say thank you to Stephen Baird. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us here at Esoteric Lighthouse. Mike, I'll let you go with some final words, and then we have a Coney bring us home.
Nothing. Just tune in next month for our next episode. Hopefully, it'll be a good one. It's a surprise to me.
Yeah. Thank you, panelists that brought some good stuff today. I know it was a lot. It's heavy. I'm gonna have to review it myself. I would say a couple of things. One is, stay the course, stay enthused. Don't let the drive and the passion wane because of things not changing for the better. I always tell everybody in masonry that somebody's watching. And they're looking to be inspired. Somebody's coming in new that has zeal. Somebody that's been in for 20 years, they want some zeal. So I would tell our viewers to stay in it. These lessons are to help you motivate yourself and others and to learn and adapt and seek out more knowledge and light. Second thing is we do have some great panelists coming up. We have some guests. We are in the works of bringing some powerful guests on the show. As all of you know, we have some, I'm going to let some little bit of cat in the hat on this one. We got Damian Jack coming up soon in a couple of months. We've got our recap at the beginning of the year next month. So we're going to just recap all the shows that we've done in the past like we normally do. We'll probably bring some of the old panelists that we have, bring one mic on, have a reunion show, say what's up, how you doing? And then we got some other great philosophical teachers, some professors from some schools of thought like Yale and Harvard and things like that, just to show that this is not just something we're making up. These are actual courses in college of philosophy. So these are learnings. These are things that are profound through times and ages. And then lastly, I would say that overarching study. Because we know amongst us three, we always learning something new and we challenge each other's thoughts. And that's the beauty of our system. Ralph Waldo Emerson said it's not the intellect to know something better than someone else, but it's to take two opposing thoughts and find a middle ground. So it's to understand that what I may know and what you may know may be a common ground between both of our thoughts. And they may oppose each other, but there's a common ground of understanding. So thank you and good night, everybody.
Ooh.